I've been looking at the ongoing negotiations between the Ukraine and Russia, and of course the United States' role in that. This is Elder Adrian Heyman, and I'm looking at this from a pragmatic and from a biblical point of view. And from what I can gather, some of you have heard about the proposal. It pretty much meets everything that Russia wants. Number one, it includes a concession by the Ukraine that it would not only give up whatever territory it's lost to Russia, but extra territory that would essentially give Russia the entire province of Donetsk, and I believe another one as well. Number two, that Ukraine's military would be kept down to a particular level. Number three, it would not be able to join NATO to defend itself. Now, the key here is that the idea is the Ukraine is so tired of fighting and looking forward to Russian domination of the entire country, that at length the Ukrainians would say, we'll take it, and we'll take our chances in the future. But it must be noted that Russia, with their leader, Vladimir Putin, is an extremely wily foe. It's not going to do anything that's going to put itself in danger. And as much as our president wants to be able to claim peace, it reminds me so much of when another aggressor had agreed to a particular peace, in which it gains a certain piece of land in exchange for a lasting peace. Then a particular statesman, a British statesman named Neville Chamberlain, he exclaimed, "Peace in our time." And I believe it wasn't a year later that the aggressor took all of that country and then proceeded to start World War II. Of course, you know that the aggressor was Nazi Germany. And the person leading Nazi Germany was Adolf Hitler, which of course resulted in millions upon millions upon millions of deaths. So much for peace in our time. Looks like it's going the same way, because Russia is not going to let a country smaller and weaker than it go ahead and dictate to them what they want. And Russia wants to be a major player in the world. It has a destiny that it wants to fulfill. And I think in that particular instance, you have to really think about it. Does Russia want more land than what it already has? And remember, this is the largest country in the world in terms of area. But it felt that with the collapse of the Soviet Union, it lost its influence. And it was very embarrassing for the Russians to be able to take the rise of the United States as the major world power. If it doesn't want to take it back, at least it wants to be able to be considered as a legitimate threat. Maybe even at some time to come back and rival China as well. So, what happens with this particular peace agreement? It all sets into motion, I believe, a scenario where Russia will not stop. It will end up conquering the Ukraine and subject its people to a lot of atrocities. And then they will set their sights to other places. And I think this is the key. The European nations are really afraid of Russia. They're very wary of its buildup, of its belligerence, of its satellite nations that trumpet its own, its own, like for instance, Hungary's President Orban is tied to Russia. Belarus is tied to Russia. And these countries are pretty much de facto satellite nations of Russia. Even more so than definitely more than what Canada and Mexico are to the U.S., both which are partners of the U.S. trade, but they have their own identity and their own way of doing things. Be very assured that Russia is not going to stop with just having a piece of Ukraine. And it's not going to stop with taking all of Ukraine. Because if they can take this and make the U.S. look foolish at the same time, it becomes a major victory for Russia. Because then it will make the U.S. feel as though it's untrustworthy and it's weak. And you can't count on the U.S. to protect anyone. And that in itself fits snugly into biblical prophecy. Now, for the sake of this country, I do hope that I'm wrong. I'm not a prophet. I don't pretend to be a prophet. I don't proclaim myself to be a prophet. But I do study prophecy. And I do realize that the nation in Ezekiel known as Gog, or known as Magog, with Gog being the prince of Magog, that designation appears to fit the vast northern kingdom of Russia. And at some time, it is going to come down and attack Israel. And at some time, it will also be destroyed by another power. Who will that power be? It most likely will not be the United States, who will try its best to try to keep from having their population involved in a threat of nuclear conflict. You have to understand, saints of God, that Russia has already mentioned the threat of nuclear warfare. It's got its people to, if not understand, at least to just accept the inevitable. We as Americans we haven't gotten to that point, and we're not even close to that particular point. We can't accept large wholesale loss of life due to war. If we get 100 people killed in a conflict, we're crying and we're lifting up our hand. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm just saying that that's what we are. And we treasure life. And we don't consider any, what do you call it, any type of world domination or rise in world feeling as a trade-off for the loss of any life. That's just how we are. Could that make us a weak nation in the eyes of many? Yes. I think it's a strength that we try to promote peace, but at the same time, with a country like Russia, who has been sending conscripts to the meat grinder that is Ukraine, thousands, hundreds of thousands of soldiers just mowed down, killed. And they're sending more even as we speak. We even hear about how they have to invite people to come and to fight. They promise things that they're not going to do. They know they're not going to give this money. They know they're not going to. But they figure once you're signed up and in, there's no way you can back out of it, and they're absolutely right. So Russia's going to do whatever it can to extend the war. They feel as if they can definitely wait out the Ukraine because of the vast population difference between the two countries. Ukraine cannot afford to lose that many more men. Russia can. And they have a premier, a president, prime minister, what do you want to call him, of Putin, who is willing to allow a large percentage of his army to be slain, to be parts of casualties in order to gain what Russia wants. Ukraine is trying to be that way, but they can't afford it. The only country that could possibly do that is the United States, but we don't have the stomach for it. And because of that, our influence will go down. You know what influence will come up? Europe's. Because Europe's population, if you combine all the nations of NATO or the European Union, actually, I believe it exceeds Russia's population. The issue is their militaries have not been fully coordinated, nor combined, nor has it been brought up to where the levels where the U.S. and Russia happen to be. But if they feel that the U.S. is not going to help, and they are a fickle ally, Europe will go on its own. And if that happens, watch out. Because there will be someone from Europe that will begin to dictate the policies of this world. They will take away more attention to itself and leave the U.S. to be by itself. As many people in the United States want the U.S. to pull back anyway, that will happen. That will happen. But when it happens, that means the U.S. is not going to have much influence over what takes place in the world. And therefore, the economy of the U.S. will not be nearly as strong, but will be susceptible to the whims of what happens between Europe, Russia, and China. Don't want to forget that either. In other words, everything is setting up for three major developments. And we have to keep watching this. Number one, the Russian aggression to move towards the West, where they will probably meet up against a united Europe, but they also will go south, as they already have Iran in its sphere of influence. You probably talk Turkey to do the same way either, because they don't trust, Turkey won't trust the United States. And what's next? Of course, Israel. The battle of Gog, as stated in Ezekiel. Number 2, China. That's growing in power and taking advantage of the U.S. missteps in foreign policy as well as in its economic turmoil. It's already gained a large foothold in Africa and in other nations as well. They will become known as what it says in the Bible as the kings of the East. And do not be fooled. China is almost already up there with the United States, and will probably go further because their economy will become the biggest in the world, just because the population of China is about 4 times as much as the United States. Over 4 times as much. If they get any kind of increase in their GDP or gross domestic product per capita or per person, it will become richer than the United States as well as stronger military-wise. So you know that's coming. Then the third one, which we have to really consider, is if we leave Europe to itself, they will have to defend themselves. And there will rise a person who will draw everyone together, bring all the European nations together, and form an alliance that will then begin to look not just to defend against Russia and China, but to use its newfound power to influence the world, especially after it deals with the aggression of Russia. Many of you may already know where I'm going with this, that it will eventually lead to the rise of what has been spoken of in the Bible as the rise of the little horn, the man of sin, the beast, the Antichrist. Keep looking, not with fear now. Don't look with fear, but with anticipation. Because if all this is taking place, it means that the time of our departure is getting extremely close. Keep looking up, for our redemption draws nigh. God bless you.